Okay, guys, so we're going to do some right triangle trigonometry, and this involves solving for a missing side. So find the measurement of each side as indicated. And I have my TI-84 up here so that I can use it. And I would suggest that you use this because I think it'll be easier to handle what's going on. So, um, yes, okay. So let's clear up here. So mine, I don't know if yours is different. Mine's the not the Chrome emulator. This is my teacher software. So my screen, instead of being up at the top, is next to it, but it's the same idea. All right, so looking at these problems, and I would suggest you pause to write them down before we go through and solve each one so that you have it all written down. So take a second, pause, write down number one. All right, so let's look at this triangle, and I have to label it so that I don't get confused. So we are looking at angle A was given to us as 23. So this is the angle that I'm going to use. So then I say, okay, opposite that angle is 6.8, is the length of it. Opposite the 90 degrees is hypotenuse. So that means the leftover is the opposite side, okay? Oops, sorry, not opposite, adjacent side. See, this is why I have to write it down. So I have adjacent, opposite, hypotenuse. Okay, so it is asking me to find side X. And what I have here is I need the adjacent and I have the opposite. So what trig function goes with adjacent and opposite? And that is tangent, right? Tangent is opposite over adjacent. So I'm going to use tangent. And it's relative to this degree, 23 degrees. So I'm going to say tangent of 23 degrees is equal to 6.8 over x. So I'm going to make that into a ratio and cross multiply. So I will have x tangent 23 degrees is equal to 6.8. I'm going to divide both sides by tangent of 23 degrees. And that way I'm solving for x. Now you could put tangent of 23 degrees in the calculator and solve for it, but then I'm going to have to retype that whole decimal, so I'm not going to do that. So using my TI-84, we are going to type this in. So 6.8, okay, then I'm going to hit divided by, and I'm going to pick tangent, and then I'm going to put 23 degrees in there. And then I can just hit enter. And straight out of my calculator, I get the answer, which is x is equal to 16 point, let's just round to one decimal place, so we'll say 16.0. So that means that the missing side is 16.0. Now make sure that your calculator is in the degree mode. Remember, we need to make sure we're in the right mode. So mine actually says degree right here on the screen. If it's not in the right place, make sure you go to mode, and then you need to arrow down to the radian and the degree section. So if you wanted it to be radians, you would press enter on radians, and now it's in radians, okay? But I don't want that, so I'm going to arrow over to degree, and I'm going to hit enter. And I'm using my keyboard to do some of these left and right kinds of things. And then I'm going to clear out of here, and I can still see that it's in degree mode, okay? So go ahead and pause to write down number two, and then we will come back and work on it. So again, I'm going to label my sides. If you don't have to do this step, then that's great. So this is my hypotenuse opposite the 90 degrees. So I'm solving for my hypotenuse. I have opposite for 8 is opposite, and I don't know anything about the adjacent. So I don't want to use any of the trig calculations that involve adjacent. So I'm not going to use cosine, but hypotenuse and opposite I can do. So that would be sine. So sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Sine of 31 degrees is equal to 8 over x. So again, I'm going to cross multiply, okay? But the other thing that you can learn is the shortcut is you just reverse these two when you're doing this. So I'm just going to say, okay, fine, x is equal to 8 divided by sine of 31 degrees. So let's use our calculator again. 8 divided by sine of 31, enter, and I got 15.5 as the answer for that one. Sorry, you can't see that part. I need to figure out this balance better. So then number 3, again, pause it, write it down if you need to. I have the hypotenuse, I have opposite, I have adjacent. So I don't really know anything about the opposite. So I'm going to use cosine because that's what's going to use this. So cosine of 65 degrees is equal to 10.8 divided by x. Now, it just so happens that we ended up with an x in the denominator of every single one of these. Sometimes it won't be. Sometimes it'll be in the numerator, and that's fine too. You're just cross multiplying. So this is cosine 65 degrees x is equal to 10.8. So then I will divide both sides by cosine of 65 because now my variable is all by itself, and I'm going to put that into the calculator. So 10.8 divided by cosine of 65. So I got 25.6. So some things to think about. If you really don't want to use cosine, could I have figured out what this other degree is? Absolutely. I know that it's 190 or 180 degrees total. I could subtract out the right angle and subtract out that 65, and I could solve and say that angle A is equal to 25 degrees. So I could have used angle A, and the thing to think about is that the placement of opposite and adjacent is dependent on the angle, okay? The hypotenuse is always the hypotenuse. But now opposite would have been down here and adjacent would have been over here. So suddenly the amount 10.8 now becomes opposite. So just make sure that you're going relative to whatever angle you're using. Okay, the opposite and the adjacent is going to be relative to the angle that you choose.